Tell me if you've heard this before. The Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs are playing in the AFC playoffs and in the AFC Championship game today on Locked On Chiefs and Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, welcome back for another episode of Locked On Chiefs and Locked On Bills, your daily podcast for covering the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for always making Locked On Chiefs and Locked On Bills your first listen of the day. Don't forget we're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well. I am Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. He is Joe Marino covering Locked On Bills, Ryan Tracy from Rogue APC and RGR Football. Lots to talk about here. We're going to be talking about the three keys to guaranteeing a win for both teams. That's going to be a little bit later in the show. We're also going to talk about the Chiefs chasing a three-peat, but we're going to start with the Bills' history versus the Chiefs in the playoffs, at least the recent history over the last 4 years. Joe, this is a huge game, obviously. We joked about it beforehand. Really nothing going on in this game, right? I mean, not playing for anything.
Yeah, it's a big one, fellas, and nice to do this twice a year with you guys. It's part of life these days. So that's part of the deal. The Chiefs have obviously set the standard in the National Football League, not just the AFC. And 7 years in a row, they've been in this game. 6 times they've hosted it. And the Bills have their opportunity right now to knock off the Chiefs. And obviously they failed the previous 3 times in doing so. Go back to that 2020 AFC Championship game. The Bills had that early lead, but boy, did it go away very quickly. And felt like Kansas City was certainly ahead of the Bills at that time. They were well into their Patrick Mahomes era, and it just didn't feel like the Bills were ready. And then you get to the next one, and, well, that was 13 seconds. And I think that the real story there from, like, you're wanting to get into the Bills side of this history, it's that the Bills had the capacity to win the game. It wasn't that they couldn't do it. It was very much circumstantial. Now it's their fault. They blew 13 seconds, but it wasn't a capacity issue. It wasn't that they couldn't beat Kansas City. And I'd say the same thing about what happened last year in Buffalo, where I thought the Bills more than anything let Kansas City off the hook, had certainly their opportunities to put them away. They had some drops and missed a field goal and weren't able to put them away and let them off the hook. And so here they are again. The Bills have certainly had the answers in the regular season. They've won the last 4, a couple of those by multiple scores, but it's empty. It doesn't mean anything. This is the one that matters, and this is the opportunity ahead of the Buffalo Bills.
And it's almost a comfort to have this matchup, because when we go to training camp every year, in the back of our mind, we have this Bills team. It's just the way that it's gone since 2020, and it's comforting to know that they both got here and things worked out, quote unquote, like they should. But the matchups are really, really interesting, and I think that the progression of both of these teams comes to a head. Some similarities this year that really stand out to me, with a lot of youth, a lot of change on the defensive side for both teams. The wide receiver groups have been turned over, so to speak. Obviously, with Shakira leading the Bills group, Xavier Worthy, for all intents and purposes, has been the one guy who's been there all season for the Chiefs, another rookie. I find that really intriguing, that these established veteran quarterbacks have to continue to try to manufacture something new and different. And I think that evolution is what brings it back and keeps it a close game. I expect another one. What stands out to you in terms of matchups with either the passing game or anything else that stands out to you?
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, when you think about this game, I don't really find as much concern on the offensive side of the football for Buffalo, where I think they're going to have some good opportunities to score and move the ball. It really comes back to the defense. The defense has been the unit that's let Buffalo down in these matchups. And what's going to be different this time? That's the question I keep going back to. And they just hadn't been able to affect Patrick Mahomes at all. He hasn't registered a turnover-worthy throw in 3 playoff matches previously. He's got a 75% completion percentage. He's throwing for over 300 yards a game. He's got a passer rating of 125 in these postseason games, which are crazy different from the regular season. There's nothing pedestrian or human about Patrick Mahomes, but his regular season splits against Buffalo absolutely are. He's a regular quarterback, not in the postseason. And I guess that's probably the story of Patrick Mahomes really of late, where it's just the flip switches, and he's tough to beat and he's tough to put away. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. And so the Bills, from a matchup perspective, have got to figure out how to affect Patrick Mahomes. And in week 11, they certainly did. I thought they did a phenomenal job with their cage rush. incorporating a spy mirror type look. They did some dime stuff, but dime not necessarily in the traditional sense of 3 down linemen, 2 linebackers, 6 defensive back look. They broke that out and they sprinkled it in a few times since. And so, those are the jabs, right? I think you can look at those as jabs, but it's all about counter punches. And obviously the Chiefs have had the counter punches in the postseason. I think the Bills have set those early jabs and maybe landed a few right hooks, win those the regular season game. But who has the answers in the postseason? So far, it's been Kansas City. And so I'm very interested in how the Bills can affect Patrick Mahomes in ways that they haven't been able to in the postseason before. Now, I think they're healthy on defense in ways that they haven't, which is probably going to be helpful, but it's all about who shows up on Sunday in Arrowhead.
You bring up your offense and you bring up the Bills, and looking at Josh Allen, looking at how he's played this season, he has played at an MVP level the entire year. He hasn't turned the ball over in a very long time, and that is part of what has made this Bills team, so dangerous. What have you seen that's been different from him this season, and more specifically later in the season and into the playoffs, that has really kind of fueled their run and kept them going in the right direction to get into this game?
Yeah, there's just not negative plays. That's what it comes down to. This is the best quarterback season since 1970 in terms of fewest percentage of plays that are interceptions or sacks. He takes care of the football. It's a different Josh Allen. He's playing with efficiency, and it's rooted in the overhaul that they've had to their offensive skill players, right? It's no longer, well, you got to feed the ball to Stephon Diggs 15 times, or you have to get Gabe Davis his touches because he's a legit number 2 receiver. That's not the case at all. In fact, if you were to look up and down this Bills receiving core and the receiving output this year, there's nothing that's going to stand out to you. It's a bunch of dudes that have caught between 20 and 50 passes, like 10 of them, right? And so he just tries to do the smart right thing with the football. And I think what's been exciting is watching Josh Allen this year and this Bills team is that every win doesn't look the same. There's some games where Josh goes out and he'll throw 4 or 5 touchdowns, get the AFC Offensive Player of the Week. And there's games like last week where he just needed to go out there and go 16-22, not turn over the ball, compress the game, get the heck out of there with a win. The scripts are very different. They've shown a lot of different ways that they can win, whether that's run heavy, pass heavy, big plays on defense. And so I think that's the mark of a great team. It's just a matter of, okay, well, now you're going up against Kansas City. And the thing about Kansas City is they just know how to win. There's no style points with Kansas City this year. Not at all. But they know how to score more points at the end of the game, especially in the postseason. And so what's the script look like? Is this a situation where both teams try to compress this game, or is someone going to go after it and go get it? And if they do, is that going to be the right idea? That's what Sean McDermott and Andy Reid got to figure out. But there's a lot of dynamics to this matchup that I think, while there's been a lot of familiarity, of course, this is a standalone opportunity that I think is going to present some unique challenges for both teams.
I think you're absolutely right. And the way that they go about it, I think being different, being multiple, both run games are a little bit more impressive this year. Honestly, if I was going to pick one guy to be nervous about, it's either return of Kincaid, who didn't play in the last matchup, or Cook. And I love the fact that both these quarterbacks now have a run game they can lean on a little bit and take some of that pressure off, but it does widen the margin of what the possibilities are. And I think that just breeds another game that's going to come down to the last possession, maybe the last play. Let's hope that it's not a kick. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, no kicks. This is the deal. No, these kickers, stay out of it. Referees, stay out of it. Let's let these players, these quarterbacks, these teams that have earned the opportunity to be there, be the ones that decide this game. Hopefully when everyone's having their overreaction afterwards, that we're talking about things that aren't kickers and referees. Amen, brother. Amen.
Can't argue with that at all whatsoever. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Chiefs chasing their three-peat right after this.
Therapy is a game changer. It helps you manage stress, improve your sleep, and even communicate more effectively. Right now, the big problem is finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule. It can be a challenge. That's where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist within 48 hours, and it's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your home, even message your therapist in between appointments. Makes life straightforward. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans. For the most insured members, there's even a zero copay. It's never been easier to prioritize your mental health. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off of your first month at Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code SPACE80, SPACE80. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code SPACE80 and you'll get $80 off your first month to show your support for the show. That's Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL. Use that code SPACE80.
There's so much to talk about when we look at this team and this game for Kansas City and for Buffalo. Kansas City chasing their three-peat. They are going after 3 Super Bowls in a row. That has not been done ever in NFL history. But I do want to mention really quick, this episode is brought to you today by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you pay $5. When you look at this for Kansas City, historically, nobody has ever won 3 Super Bowls in a row. Obviously, something that they are trying to do. And at this point, really the bigger story, I mean, chasing 3 Super Bowls, it's going to be a lot of fun. But the bigger story is they have to get past Josh Allen to have a chance to do that. Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen. I completely agree with you, Joe. I think that this is going to be a matchup that we want to be decided by the quarterbacks and by those types of players, not the kickers, not the refs, and just go out and have a lot of fun football.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned obviously the historic run that Kansas City's after opportunity right in front of them to win a 3rd consecutive Super Bowl. And so as you've seen this Chiefs team be on these stages, this is, like we mentioned, the 7th consecutive AFC Championship game. The success is unprecedented. Knocking on the door of that three-peat, where does this Chiefs team stack up compared to like these previous 6? Because they've looked so different to me throughout that journey, and they've won in different ways. But I guess maybe what gives you confidence in this group, but also where do the concerns lie that maybe there's something that's missing this year?
It comes down to the evolution that they've had to go through on the offensive side, much like the Bills. And this isn't just about the quarterback raising his game to match his teammates. There's no Tyreek Hill on this roster, hasn't been for a couple of years, and yet they've still been able to cope and manage. And I feel that that's more about the stars and Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce distributing their greatness by pulling this team along. They've added a couple of pieces as well in veterans in Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins, who's already had an impact on the young receiver Xavier Worthy. So it's really, I think, about the trickle-down effect of what experience brings to this ball game, because they can't do it themselves. They got to pull everybody up by their bootstraps. And I think that is a more, again, pliable, a more adaptable kind of team, whether it's on the defensive side. We've seen Spags get maybe more creative than any season that we've seen in the past, and yet he can turn it all the way down if he has to. And the same thing on the offensive side with a dual running attack right now gives you that variation that I think they can adapt to a lot of different things. The question will be is, can they adapt as quickly as the Bills can?
Yeah, obviously that's going to be a heck of a storyline to follow. When you go back to this team back in week 11, on the offensive side of the football, there has been a lot of changes. Isaiah Pacheco's back in the lineup. Hollywood Brown is in the lineup. Now, they've been pretty quiet to this point. They've also made some changes with the offensive line. Joe Thuney, the left guard's now playing left tackle, so you change 2 spots to fix one. Mike Caliendo, an experienced player, coming in at left guard. How have these changes impacted the offense to this point? Are you seeing a better version of this Chiefs team? Have they been helpful? Or has there been some, onboarding challenges that have made there be things they got to figure out?
Well, I think what you've seen is Isaiah Pacheco is probably going to take a little bit of a backseat to Kareem Hunt, at least in the running back room. That is kind of what you've seen the past couple of weeks, is Kareem Hunt has come in when the game is getting closer or they're trying to close something out. I think also with Joe Thuney, he has helped solidify the left tackle position to an extent. I'm still not sure 100% that he's going to be the left tackle this week. It could be DJ Humphries. We will see if they decide they want to make a move going that direction. The problem that you have with playing Thuney at left tackle is it makes your left guard position much weaker with Caliendo. He is probably a little bit more closer to average at best at that left guard position, and that becomes a weakness where they used to have the 3 best interior offensive linemen in the NFL. And as you know, interior pressure is what kills QBs the quickest. So you want to keep that off. So I think that is something that they need to work on. And when you talk about Hollywood Brown, it's a question of, how do they get him acclimated and how do they get him in the flow of the offense?
Yeah.
When you watch last week's game, they didn't really use Hollywood Brown. They only had 2 targets to him at all. He didn't have that many snaps. I do think that that's something that I think is going to be a lot different in this Bills game, that I would expect that he's going to get probably 5, 6, 7 targets in this game at least, because I do think they're going to try to use him a lot more and use what he does on the field to kind of change how they're attacking the Bills defense.
How about on the defensive side of the football? I mean, since week 11, again, changes there from, in my inventory, it's Charles Omenihu back in the lineup. Josh Uche has been really kind of phased out after trading for him. Nas Johnson, who the Bills went after in a big way, he's still in the lineup, but Jalen Watson's also back. Are we back to platooning there? I know they've done that with other players at that other CB spot. And plus, Jaden Hicks feels like he's really ramped up as this like extra safety, and I'm sure he'll have an important role this week given the Bills and their bigger personnel and, of course, the Josh Allen factor. How have you seen this defense really change, if at all, since week 11 with those changes?
It's been a lot of swapping in and out. Platooning is a good way to put it, although with the performance that Jalen Watson had last week, we expect him to start on the outside. Whether it's going to be a Joshua Williams or a Najee Johnson or a CRW coming in, they have some other options in the second tier, but clearly the return of Watson gives them what they feel is a 1-2 punch at corner. And I think they're going to need it. There are bigger bodies that the Bills are going to bring to the table that, quite frankly, Najee Johnson hasn't been able to combat physically just because of the dimensions that he brings to the field. So that's going to be a rotation. The emergence of Hicks just in the last 4 contests has really been pretty stark, and I do think he's going to be a chess piece. The Steve Spagnuolo has not really released how well he's going to use him. He's kind of the X factor for me, and how they choose to try to defend not just the offense, but Josh in particular, so that he doesn't have what I felt was a fairly easy day the other day, moving around and being physical as we know that he can. The bigger difference is that they've got the same rotation at the defensive line spot. And so they've been protected a little bit in the secondary because you never know who's going to have the day. Last week, it was George Karlaftis. We've seen many of you bring the pressure. Mike Dan is doing God's work underneath, and nobody gives him credit. But there's a lot of pressure there to be had. And obviously, Chris Jones is Chris Jones. The question is going to be, does Spags choose to really press the issue like you were talking about before and bring A-gap pressure and put Leo Chanel in there or send Nick Bolton on a delay? I do think they're going to send some 5-man pressures. The question is going to be, do they go classic and go outside, or are they going to try to get right up in the A-gap?
Yeah, that chess match has been really fun to watch between Joe Brady and Steve Spagnuolo, where, of course, we know Spags is going to blitz, 5th highest blitz rate in the league this year. That's pretty much where he always is. But the Bills have combated that with a lot of motion, with a lot of 4-strong alignments that have given Kansas City some challenges. And so I'm interested to see, like, what are those counter punches from both sides, because I thought Josh Allen's ability to, like, handle the blitz in week 11 and really just kind of anticipate and get the ball out and navigate was really, really strong. But, okay, now that that's out there, what's in store for this particular game? I want to ask you guys one more question here. For game script, and we'll get into, of course, 3 keys to win the game in the next segment, but when you do think about this game script for Kansas City to win, not necessarily specifically, I think the best description that I've heard about this Chiefs team is that they kind of attack you like a boa constrictor, right? Where they squeeze and squeeze and squeeze, and eventually you die and they win the game. Do you think that they come into this game with the idea that, okay, Buffalo at some point is going to make a back-breaking mistake? Very much like that's kind of what they had against Houston, right? It was like, didn't have to do much here. Houston's going to beat themselves. CJ Stroud's a clown in the pocket, right? You have a bad pass blocking offensive line, quarterback that can't navigate pressure. It's a bad recipe, right? Buffalo did the same thing to Baltimore last week. They didn't have to do a lot. It was like, okay, Lamar in these big moments, he just makes mistakes. And that's exactly what happened. And you just get out of there with a win. Is this a situation where you think that Kansas City is going to invite Buffalo to beat themselves, or is there a level of go get this thing at home that you're expecting out of Andy Reid and company?
I personally think that this is going to be something where they're going to be going after it. I don't think that they're going to be looking at this Buffalo Bills team and thinking that they're going to come out and have mistakes happen. The Bills haven't done that this season. They've been historically very good at not turning the ball over And if you're trying to wait for a mistake, I think that's a problem. Kansas City needs to come out and attack, and that's what I expect. I do think that they look at this, and it's different than the Houston game, because when you look at Houston, you at least see some weaknesses that you think you can exploit. With Buffalo, yeah, you can probably exploit the defense to an extent because they've been poor at times this season. But offensively, they haven't been turning the ball over, and Josh Allen hasn't playing like he used to, 4 or 5 years ago, where he's turning the ball over all the time. So if you're trying to wait for that, I think you're going to be waiting too long, and you're going to end up losing this game.
And the interesting thing about Josh Allen and those narratives, which are true, they never were true in the postseason. That's he's
right.
Literally has the lowest interception percentage in postseason history. So in these years where he does have double-digit turnovers, never in the postseason. And so that's very interesting. And it makes me wonder, like, is this going to be a low-scoring game? Like, I know these games are kind of like 24-20 type games, but could it be even lower? I mean, with the Baltimore, was it 14-10 last year in this game against Baltimore? I just wonder if there's how these teams are going to attack it, because they both have had this compression style about them, but there's certainly the go-get-it ability, and threading that needle is going to be fascinating to find out.
I agree with you. And I think, honestly, they've both been doing this so long that I think it's going to be just go after it for both of them. I actually think the opposite, that they both feel and respect each other enough that they have to go after and make something happen. How do they do that? And what are those keys to getting that win? That's coming up next. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can bet just $5 to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets back on your account, win or lose. Right now, FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, for same-game parlays, and much, much more. You can get in the action right now, whether it's the wild card round to see what the Bills and Broncos do, whether it's the Chargers, or you're just getting ready for the divisional round where the Chiefs are back in it. Visit FanDuel.com today. Get signed up. Get started with $200 in bonus bets. Right now, it's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff unforgettable with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
When you look at this game, it's going to come down to who takes care of the ball. We know that. Joe, what do you see as the three biggest keys to the Bills winning this one in Kansas City?
Yeah, I think number one's running the football. The Bills have a very dynamic rushing offense. So far in this playoff run, they tagged the Broncos and the Ravens for the most rushing yards they've given up all season long. 147 against Baltimore, 210 against Denver, and those were great run defenses this year. Number 2 and number 3 in EPA defending the run this season, and the Bills were able to have literally the best rushing performance that they've had all season against those teams. And there's some really unique dynamics here with, of course, the Bills in the postseason and the appetite to run Josh Allen. That'll be a big factor, in addition to Spencer Brown, who's really become a high-level right tackle, in particular run blocking. He wasn't available in Week 11. And his return, plus Alec Anderson as the 6th offensive lineman, where I think the Bills were reluctant to put him on the field given some of the issues with Spencer Brown and depth concerns. He played the lowest percentage of snaps he has all season, 8%. He's usually 20 to 25%. I think the Bills are going to run the ball. And look, the Chiefs' run defense has absolutely been slumping. When these teams hooked up in Week 11, they were number 4 in EPA defending the run. They finished the season number 11. They gave up, 158 or 149 to Houston last week, 202 to Pittsburgh, 139 to the Browns. The Raiders can't run the ball on anyone. They got 116. So I think that the Chiefs have a tall order ahead of them to defend this Buffalo rushing offense. I think that's got to be a big part of what Buffalo does on Sunday night. Number 2 is protection schemes. We know that Spags blitzes, number 5 in blitz rate. It's not super effective. Number 18 in pressure rate, number 22 in sack percentage. And the Bills have used motion. They've used 4 strong. They got the 4th and 2 run for 26 yards because they knew exactly the blitz that was coming from Steve Spagnuolo. Well, there's going to be counter punches, and the Bills need to have the right plan to defeat and protect what they have coming. Obviously, tight ends are a big deal. Bills didn't have Dalton Kincaid when these two teams played in Week 11, and the Chiefs have given up the most receiving yards to tight ends of any team this season in the NFL. Those are 2 great opportunities for Buffalo, in addition to just kind of working their slots. I mean, there's been a good amount of slot production against this Chiefs defense this year, and that's who the Bills like to throw to. Tight end, slots, running backs, that'll be on the menu. And then number 3, it's having the right pass rush plan. We talked about it. The Bills have not been able to affect Patrick Mahomes at all. in the postseason. How is it going to be different this time? Well, can you replicate a lot of what you did in week 11, which was highly effective? Well, I'm sure Kansas City is going to be ready for a lot of that with your cage rush, your spy mirror, going with some of your dime packages. And then whatever you do there, you still have to be disciplined in coverage because Patrick Mahomes is the most instinctive player in the NFL and can really make you pay. And I think that's been such a story in these matchups where because the Bills couldn't get pressure on Mahomes, your zones can only hold up for so long. And obviously you got a great player in Kelsey that just knows how to find space. It's been a bad recipe for Buffalo. So you got to have the right plan to affect Patrick Mahomes or else going to look like the last three.
To me, when I look at this, it's a question of, obviously, as I said, you have to take care of the ball. We know that. But it's about attacking, and it's about attacking from the start. To me, the biggest key in this game is getting the Patrick Mahomes going early and getting the ball to the wide receivers that really weren't used against the Houston Texans. Spread the ball around and make Buffalo defend the entire field. I think that is the biggest key in guaranteeing a win for the Chiefs.
I will put it this way. I would say they have to dare to dream. You can't be this team that's won ugly all season. You can't just sit back and be happy to eat up clock, move the ball, and eventually you're going to punch it in. No. Bills are not going to sit still for that. You have to play as though your life depends on it because it does. Get out there, go after it, be aggressive on offense and on defense. You have to keep it fresh. As you said, he's been a little bit predictable, has not gotten home with his especially less exotic blitzes. He will run inversions this week. He will send somebody out of nowhere. You will see looping defenders. The question is, are you looping into where Josh is trying to escape, or are you looping away from him and giving up huge chunks? For me, it's got to stop Cook first. You got to stop Josh second, and you got to play up to your capabilities, not down to expectations. Those are the keys for me.
You know, the last one that I look at for me is Kansas City's offense has to be efficient enough to not have a ton of 3-and-outs. When you look at how this team has struggled this year, it's they go in and they go out on offense and they run twice and don't get anywhere, and then they throw the ball and they're out real quick. You do that against this Buffalo Bills team, you're going to get run out of the stadium. You have to take care of the ball. It doesn't matter if you score every single possession. Yes, you want to, but you have to take time of possession and not have it work against you in this game. If Kansas City can at least, keep the time of possession close, this is a game that I think that they have the ability to win, but they have to be able to move the ball a little bit so they have the ability to stay up on defense in the fourth quarter and have the energy to do it, because if you give the Bills a whole bunch of long drives, it's going to be a very long game.
Yeah, so fundamentals of winning football, gentlemen. Two great teams, two great quarterbacks, one that wants what the other one has. So, and then there's this other piece of this that I don't know that Chiefs fans are thinking about quite like Bills fans are. But, obviously the Bills want to hold on to all the history that they can. They hadn't won any Super Bowls, but they have been to 4 in a row. Well, this would be 3 for Kansas City to be knocking on the door and taking that from Buffalo. So there's that extra incentive. So not only do you have the opportunity to bounce the Chiefs, which, let's be honest, everybody that's not a Chiefs fan is pretty much rooting for. You don't want them to come get the one piece of history that you're proud of, even though you lost all 4. So the storylines abound, and I'm looking forward to this. I mean, it's exciting to think the only playoff quarterback matchup that's happened more is Brady and Manning, and they did it 5 times. That's coming next year, boys. We'll be back here. You know what I mean? So This is a lot of fun, and obviously we'll get a chance to do this a couple times, in perpetuity.
Well, and you talk about the quarterback matchup, Allen versus Mahomes. The other thing that really sticks out in my mind is Allen is up for MVP, should be a front runner for MVP. Mahomes isn't even on the Pro Bowl roster right now. And so you have that aspect going into it as well. I think that also gives a little bit of an extra dynamic.
Yeah, and that was a big storyline last week with Baltimore, who had 9 Pro Bowlers, and the Bills had 2. Yep. It's like, what was the quote? Well, now those 9 Pro Bowlers can go to the Pro Bowl, right? So, Look, do these teams need any extra motivation? There's an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl, and I think that's what if we can end on this, I really do admire the mutual respect that both of these teams have for each other's, these coaches, these quarterbacks, these players, and for the most part, the fan base. It's really cool to see. Look, I mean, the Chiefs have had all this success, so there's nothing to really gloat about. I mean, everybody, the Chiefs have it, but I feel like, even my times in Kansas City, I've really enjoyed everybody that I've met, and it's been very respectful. And so it's cool to kind of see two really good operations and the mutual respect that exists between, really all facets of it.
I'm 100% with you. Nobody I'd rather play in this game than the Buffalo Bills, and nobody I'd rather talk to than you. Thank you for doing it, Joe. Make sure you check out Joe's show at Locked On Bills, our show at Locked On Chiefs. Thanks for being with us. It's going to be a heck of a ball game. Don't miss it. We'll have content for you directly after. Make sure you like, sub, hit the bell, and get with us. Have a great one. And here's to the AFC Championship game.